call the meeting. We will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call. Mr. Brimmer. Present. Mr. Shargat.
Yes.
Mr. Marvel. Here. Mr. Marty sent us a letter and he will be resigning, so we will not see him tonight or again on the Planning Commission. We wish him luck. Ms. Shandell here and Mr. Nixon is here tonight. We also have Miss Darla, who is our city manager, Mr. Moore, our city planner, and Miss April, who is our clerk. We need a motion to approve the minutes of January.
I'll make a motion.
I just want to say it looked like Mr. Marvel was missing from the roll call on that one. I don't know if we want to fix that or not, but just a note. I don't know if I'm picking up. Sorry about that.
Am I?
It looked like you were missing on that last one. But you were sworn in as a vice chair under that, so clearly you were here. Just a note.
Yeah. I'll second the motion with the change.
Second the motion. The change. Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Alrighty. We need a motion to approve the agenda tonight.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
We'll second that. And now we get to public comments. Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, I'm getting ahead of myself. For the motion to approve the agenda tonight, please signify with aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay. Now we will move to public comments. Citizens wishing to speak on agenda and non-agenda items will be allowed a maximum of 4 minutes each to address their concerns. This is the only time during the meeting that citizens are allowed to address the Planning Commission. Please state your name and address for the record if you would like.
Sonia, want to say anything? So I have a letter to read. A letter was submitted today to me from Sue Wolf. She wants it read tonight under public comment. Dear Planning Commissioners, Happy New Year. After talking with the city manager, Darla Falcon, I understand she will be asking you to change some sections of the city's zoning back to a residential zone so that current residents, both single family and multifamily properties located in those residential areas, will be changed back to use by right. I am hoping you will support her recommendation. I am unable to attend tonight's meeting or even join you online. Therefore, I am writing this letter. First, when the council changed the zoning about 2 years ago, preventing long-time existing multifamily homes from being allowed by right and only to continue as legal non-conforming use, it meant they cannot be rebuilt if damaged 50% or more. Residential property owners in these newly zoned areas are now finding they cannot sell these properties as traditional financing institutions will not lend money to the buyers. The lenders are not willing to finance a property when their investment can't be repaired or rebuilt to the same structural use. This creates a negative situation for the city. If a home and/or investment property can't be sold, how much investment and enhancement can or will be put into the property? Secondly, both sides of First Street, south side of Pine Street, and even some other areas of the city currently used as residential should be zoned residential to continue allowing all types of residential housing. I believe Ms. Falcon is presenting you with a reasonable and fair zoning amendment, if I understand it correctly. I am hopeful you will change the zoning to accommodate more housing and not less housing options for our residents. As you know, there is a national shortage of affordable housing. I am hoping our city will help by creating housing for more residents. I will try to watch for any upcoming meetings involving this zoning change. Gratefully yours, Sue Wolf.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Darla. Is there anyone online? Okay, anybody here? Okay, so seeing that there is nobody wishing to partake, we will close public comments. Now we will have conflicts of interest and ex parte communication. Anything? Seeing none? Okay. We will move. I don't think we have any scheduled public hearings tonight. Or site plan reviews. We will move to other business. The B2 Central Business District downtown zoning proposed changes. Who would like to take us through that?
Yes, please.
All right. So you have on page 8 of your packets, a memorandum from us that builds on what we talked about at the last meeting. So if you recall at the January planning commission meeting, we talked about our thought that we should rezone some of the properties that are on that first block between Main Street and First Street or Second Street. Don't have frontage on Main Street back to a residential zone. We want to do that because they're used for residential purposes, and it seems unlikely for the most part that those will or should turn into commercial properties. So the thought was to eliminate the non-conforming situations that are present on some of those properties and zone them back to something that makes a little bit more sense. So we kind of walk through what that would look like in our in this memo. So on the first page, we have two maps that are kind of side by side. The map on the left shows your existing zoning map, which, as you can see, it's just 12 blocks basically of just solid C2 zoning. And then on the right-hand side in red is the master plan future land use map, which the red shows the downtown designation. So we want the zoning map to align a little more closely with what we have there on the future land use map. Understanding there is some room from what will have to be perfectly one-to-one because the master plan is looking out, 10, 20 years or more. Where zoning is immediate. If you scroll down onto the second page of our report, there is yet another map. This one shows what we would propose for your zoning. So again, that kind of pink that's right in the middle is the downtown, your B2 district. Then if you look on the right-hand side of that, there's a bunch of properties that are outlined in purple. Those would get rezoned back to a residential district. Our thinking.
A hard copy anyplace, or is it just online? I've got these.
It's in the packet. You looking on the computer?
He doesn't have the packet on his computer. He only has the agenda. I don't know how to do that. Sorry.
The 9. So just to get you caught up on page 8 of the packet, the first page of our report, we've got zoning on the left, future land use on the right. Then the next page down is where we get into what we might want to change. And so the pink would remain C2. I'm sorry, B2, thank you. And then everything that's outlined in purple would go to a residential district 1. Then if you look on the On the other side of Main Street between Main and Second, it's a little bit harder to see, but there's also some purple outline there where that darker red. Those would go to mixed use, which would allow single family, two family, and some commercial uses as well. Right now, most of those properties are also residences, so we thought the mixed use designation or the mixed use zoning district there would make more sense. So that's kind of how we're thinking about this. The little spot where the B2 district extends a little bit farther east of First Street towards Grant, that's where Sue's Country Kitchen is, so that would remain zone commercial. We're not going to change that. But this is kind of what we were talking about, where we just want to go through, identify some of these residential properties, get them to a more conforming state. You know, for the most part, again, I don't think the backside of Main Street there have been used for residences for remain that way. So, one thing I do want to mention with respect to the letter from, Ms. Weil, that she does mention one thing here that I want to clean up, or I want to clarify, I guess, where she says, existing multifamily homes being, can only continue as a legal non-conforming use. With respect, especially to the R1 district, those multifamily properties there are probably going to still be non-conforming. This doesn't necessarily fix that. It's better because it's a residential zone, but your R1 district does not permit multifamily buildings. Some of those may still continue to be non-conformities. But when we get to the zoning ordinance audit, which we'll talk about here in a minute, we have one of the things that I want to work on is your non-conforming chapter, which is pretty thin right now, and it can work in our opinion, so we can address some of these non-conforming issues that she mentions in the letter through that. But this by itself is not going to solve like every non-conforming issue. So but I think it helps. At least from a land use perspective, anything that's zoned, that's currently zoned B2, it would get moved into R1 and contains a single house. Those go from non-conforming to conforming just by making that change. That's a major step in the right direction. But if there's like there's like a 3 or 4-plex in there someplace, that's gonna still be non-conforming probably. So I just wanted to point that out.
Consider changing it to R2 then? Or that not make sense?
I mean, I'm trying to be as consistent with the surrounding zoning as we can, and with the master plan, which all calls for single family there.
Yeah.
I think I would prefer, at least for now, to keep it R1, tackle the non-conforming issue, because I think we can address some of those more specific concerns through the non-conforming chapter. And right now, that chapter offers us very little guidance, or we almost have to make it up on the fly just to kind of figure out what to do there. And pretty challenging, so I'd like to address that. Because I mean, if it's been past practice that we can't let people rebuild their house if it gets damaged by 50% or more of the total value, that's really restrictive. So we could take that up to 80 or 90% instead of 50%, or remove that percentage altogether. There's a bunch of other things that we can do there that'll make those properties more marketable for. So as we mentioned, this is going to be kind of a longer multi-step process. So the first step was to show you precisely what we're looking at. If you're comfortable with this, we can move towards drafting an ordinance that would actually rezone all of these properties. Get us all on the same page in terms of what precisely we would be proposing. Through that amendment to make sure you're comfortable with it, and then we can bring an amendment back next month for.
I think last month we talked about maybe some reach out to these affected property owners to see what their opinion was. Is this based on that reach out, or have we not reached out yet to see if there's input? Yeah, so basically put a plan together, then we're going to reach out prior to hopefully that meeting just for input.
Public hearing.
Yeah,
So
so
they would all get notified.
they would all get notified through the public hearing process, because they would all get a letter. We could notify them prior to that as well, so they just don't get a notice that says, hey, the city's gonna rezone your property, and they don't know, they didn't ask for it, so that might be a little confused, so. It might be worth sending those property letters to let them know what we're doing. Basically, like, look, we're trying to make everyone's life easier here and help everyone out, and I think, proactive communication kind of settle things down. I've had a few experiences over the years where we do something like this, and if people aren't informed early and often, it slips through the cracks, and then they're along, that notice comes in the mail that says we're something that affects their property. So I think
To me, this seems like a common sense plan, so I think maybe some, just to give them some additional information earlier, I think that would help.
I did some more analysis on the east side, on the west side, I mean, the Second Street side. So at the top of the first purple outlined area, we've got the new city parking lot, just south of the brewery's parking lot. And then there's the corner parcel there is owned by the Cronkite family. And then that whole next block is the fire station. Then you have 3 houses, a house, a private parking lot, 2 houses and 2 houses. So this, like the city parking lot, the fire station, what would it be more beneficial to have that mixed use or stay B2?
it doesn't really matter, because the city can kind of do whatever it wants. You don't have to follow your own zoning ordinance. I think in both of those districts, public buildings would be permitted anyways. I'll have to double check that. As long as public uses are out there, I think either would be fine, but that city-owned property will likely over a long period of time, yeah, honestly, it's fine.
I just wanted to see for myself how many actual houses were in that area.
It's not as many on the side.
You mean on the east side, of Second is going to be where the fire station is and stuff. Cause the east side goes towards Greenville, right? And Second, you're going north,
In the purple boxes here that he has identified.
right?
The Second Street is what she's talking about.
Yeah, I thought she said west side, and I was confused at first, cause fire stations.
West side of the,
Okay. I was like, but I thought we were just, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think having the mixed use, we've always had a mixed use, and I think having that there will be beneficial. Because you're right up. There's so much you can do in the mixed use versus just doing residential or B2.
Yeah, and the mixed use area on that west side of Main Street makes sense anyways, because there's several industrial businesses back there, so the flexibility there makes a lot of sense.
so maybe notify the residents if they want to come to the March meeting. At the March meeting, we can have a draft amended ordinance, then schedule the public hearing. That sound reasonable? Okay.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Any other questions or comments on this map, or are we comfortable with it so far?
I think so. we're going to send out something this month about to come to the March meeting, and then we will discuss it again and then make our,
We'd probably do a public hearing in April and then
in April. Okay.
city council.
That's the word I couldn't get out. Recommendation. Okay. Anything else about the B2? Okay. So the next we have is the zoning ordinance audit.
Yep, so again, if you remember last month, we had talked about some work on the zoning ordinance that we wanted to do to kind of begin to implement the master plan. We had initially pitched a lengthy and complicated audit, which you guys were not so enthusiastic about, so we slimmed that down a little bit. So instead of being 15 pages, it's like 3 or 4. So basically all we did here, just kind of walked through article by article and just made some of the major observations of things that we could work on in the ordinance. Understanding this is not an exhaustive list, but it's kind of the things that we noticed with our review that we think could use some work. Some of these are going to be significant efforts. Some of them will be pretty minor. So I'm just going to kind of go through bullet by bullet here. So bottom of page 1 of my report, Article 2, Administration and Enforcement, Division 1 generally. So this section 3242 outlines the process for amending the ordinance. A lot of times we'll see that if there is a text amendment or a map amendment, there are a bunch of standards in there that kind of guide your decision-making process. Your ordinance does not have any. So we would simply amend the ordinance to add those. Next one, Division 2 on the next page, site plan review. You guys have 19 standards for consideration when you're reviewing a site plan. That's too many in my opinion. I think we could probably pare that down to about 7 or 8. It'll make my staff report shorter, save you some time in the review process. Some of them will be combined. Some of them could be removed. None of them are binding. So when we're looking at a site plan, they're really considerations and not standards. So I think we can pare that list down to something that's a little bit more digestible that still hits kind of the key things that we're looking at. Circulation, access, environmental concerns, parking, so on and so forth. The next one, Division 3, Zoning Board of Appeals. You guys permit use variances. A lot of communities don't. A lot of planners, including usually myself, would maybe prohibiting those. So a use variance is when the Zoning Board of Appeals permits a use that is not otherwise permitted in that district through a variance process. So somebody could come into, if they're zoned residential, they could come in and say, I want to use this property for a commercial purpose. I want to have a business there, a restaurant or something. The ZBA could grant that as a variance, a use variance. They're pretty rarely used. It's almost impossible if the ZBA is being honest to grant those, because they really have to find that there's no other realistic use of the property, which is standard to meet. So you might want to just consider getting rid of them altogether, especially because now in the last 10 or 15 years, we have a couple of additional tools in our toolbox that we can use to deal with these things, like conditional rezonings and other topics. So something to think about there would just be getting rid of that entire section on use variance or adding a provision that just prohibits them completely. Article 3, and by the way, just jump in if you have any questions or comments and stop me. We can kind of have this be more of a conversation. Article 3, district regulations. So divisions 3 through 12 are your district chapters. So every division is one of your districts. So R1, R2, etc. For the most part, these are fine. There are a few instances where we have specific standards listed under a land use in the district chapter. Just to make the thing easier to read, sometimes we'll want to move those someplace else in the ordinance. So that list of permitted and special uses is just kind of a nice short digestible list, and then we'll just refer to the standard someplace else. We do that not only for readability, but sometimes if you're permitting the same thing with the same regulations in multiple districts, you're repeating the same standards like 4 times and it makes your ordinance a lot longer. So sometimes we can shorten things up a little bit and make it a bit easier to work with there. And then some of it, just the overall descriptions basically of the land uses could be shortened a bit. You know, we have things called like, you know, restaurants excluding drive-throughs and not permitting dancing, live entertainment, or the consumption of alcoholic beverages on the premises. Like, I would say maybe we can just consider that like restaurants. Maybe we distinguish between drive-through and not drive-through. I don't know that we need to distinguish between alcohol service versus not having alcohol service, because from a land use perspective, there's really not that much difference between the two in terms of traffic and parking and all this other stuff. So there's some things that we can do there to maybe just kind of simplify that kind of a list, because again, this is it's to be a little bit hard to work with. You know, in this example here, you're not permitting dancing, live entertainment, or the consumption of alcohol. So, okay, so you could have a restaurant, but you couldn't have an acoustic guitar player inside playing music. Well, you know, why? What's the you know what I mean? So like, we would ask, why not? What's the problem with that? Why do we need to make that distinction? What's the land use impact of that? And kind of think through that. So some of those distinctions we don't need to make, and it makes it really difficult to tell an applicant who has an otherwise perfectly viable business, well, you can't do that because you might have live music or you might have dancing or something like that. So again, simplifying it, making it a little bit more permissive, I think probably makes some sense. In Division 13, so I think just kind of broadly, we should look at the dimensional requirements at some point. So your setbacks, lot coverage, those kinds of things to make sure they still make sense. We're not creating a bunch of non-conformities. Most of them are probably fine, but again, helpful to kind of review those every once in a while to make sure they still work. And interestingly, under the second bullet there, under number 13, so if you go to the dimensional requirements table itself has a bunch of footnotes in there, A, B, C, D, blah, 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 blah. But the list underneath it to which those refer are not A, B, C, D, E, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then once you get down to about the letter N or M, it's something that there's a mess up in there, and then the sequence of numbers to letters breaks. You get down to like RSTL. So it's kind of a clerical thing. I'm not sure why it's like that. I did some research on it and I figured out when it happened. I'm not sure if it's a thing that Unicode needs to fix online or if we just need to redo an amendment and fix that section. But it will confuse everybody who reads this if they don't know. If they don't sit down, like print it out and like draw a bunch of lines on paper and to figure out which thing is referring to what. It's going to be confusing, so we should clean that up. Article 4, just some general comments. So when we're talking about requirements for landscaping, parking, etc., we should use as many tables as we can and graphics. The ordinance is a little light on both of those, and it's typically a lot easier for people to read when we have a lot of tables and graphics in there. You've got like 2 pages on accessory buildings in your ordinance, which we could probably find a way to simplify again. It doesn't really need to be that complicated, and there are some good reasons for a lot of the standards in there, I'm sure, but I bet we could trim it down in terms of length, make it a little bit more usable for people. There's a section in there that basically says if you rezone property, after some period of time, it just automatically rezones back if they don't do anything with it. And except for a conditional rezoning, that's pretty sure that's not something that we can legally do. So I would just take that out completely. There's no automatic zoning changes generally. Really not much happens in zoning that's automatic. Everything has a process involved. I mentioned before when we were talking about the B2 zone, the chapter on non-conforming uses, that's Article 5. I mean, that entire article is like a page, and it's way too thin. It needs there's a lot of things in there that are need to be mentioned and talked about that are not mentioned and talked about that need to offer guidance. Like we just have no idea what to do in certain situations with non-conforming buildings or non-conforming uses and these situations that come up. I'll read through the non-conformings chapter and it's just like, there's just nothing there to go on. So we're kind of stuck and we need to have some language in here that provides a process that we can work with residents. Article 6, parking and loading. There's a bunch of definitions in there. I think we just moved all those to Article 1 because that's where the rest of your definitions are in the zoning ordinance. We typically like to review every once in a while the minimum parking standards to make sure that we're not over parking, we're not requiring a lot more parking than we need. Although I would remind you guys, and some of you would remember maybe 2 years ago, when Mr. Womack was here, we adopted some pretty brief amendment to that parking chapter that gave the Planning Commission a lot of discretion to kind of adjust parking up or down based on what's being proposed, because kind of philosophically, we don't want someone to be required to put in 50 parking spaces when they just don't. Especially downtown, we have public parking lots, we have on-street parking, and frankly, parking lots are a bad and unproductive use of property when you're talking about prime real estate downtown. So we'd want to encourage as much as possible that those properties get used for productive commercial buildings and businesses instead of just parking lots. Article 8, special approval standards. I'll change the name to special land uses because that's really what we're talking about here. Again, it's a minor thing, but it's confusing if you don't know how to navigate the stuff very well. Within that chapter, we have a bunch of subsections that regulate specific types of special land uses in the city, like multifamily or whatever. Some of those I think we should take a look at to make sure they're not too restrictive. So sometimes somebody will want to establish some kind of new land use. It'll be permitted in that district as a special use. Then we will go to these specific requirements and say, oh, this requires you to have 2 acres and they don't have it. Or this requires you to have, extra landscaping or increased setbacks or something like that. And it makes it totally impossible for that to happen. So sometimes these standards can be too onerous and they can deter otherwise viable businesses. And so I think we should at least kind of go through that list at some point and we can provide some suggestions, but see if we can remove some of those regulations. Or maybe there are items in here where we just say, hey, look, this doesn't need to be a special land use at all. Let's just get rid of it and move it up into the list of permitted uses in that district chapter. In 32-693 sub 1, we have the standards that you go through when you're evaluating a special land use. Now, these are standards, so we can say that thou, shall be consistent with the intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance, and you shall not require more public services than can be provided and things like that. You don't have anything in there that requires a use to be consistent with the master plan. And I think that's an important standard to have in there with a special use, because when we're looking at special uses, we're thinking about things that may or may not be compatible or appropriate in that location. So we need to give it some special attention. But I think when we're giving it that special attention, it's important for the Planning Commission to see if that use is consistent with the master plan and what it's recommending. In that same area, 32-694 through 700, there are a few areas where there is a section title that's like let's say multifamily residential. But if you go to the district chapter, it's like apartments and condominiums and other multifamily buildings. It's the same. We can kind of infer that that's supposed to regulate that thing, but the language is not identical. And so that's something where that language should really be the same. So again, it's unlikely, I hope, but if we ever find ourselves in a really difficult situation with a savvy developer or their attorney, I don't really want them to say, well, that doesn't apply because applies to apartments and this over here is talking about multifamily. And that's not, you know what I mean? Like the technical stuff, I think we can line that up as much as we can. Surprised to see in 32701 that if you approve or deny a special use, somebody can appeal that decision to the city council. That is something that I would prefer to just remove altogether and just say that you shall not appeal a special use to anybody other than circuit court. Some ordinances will refer to a township board or a city council. Others will send that to the zoning board of appeals. In our view, a special use shouldn't be appealable to anybody else at the city. It tends to give, if it goes to city council, then it becomes a sort of a political decision. If it goes to the ZBA or the city council, it also kind of lets them override the planning commission. And that's not really their job in either case, especially with the ZBA. But I also don't think it's appropriate for council to be doing that. So I would change that section to just say no appeals, period, other than circuit court from a special land use decision. And if somebody wants to do that, of course, there's a process for that. Last item under Article 10, manufactured home parks. There's a lot of standards in there, and most of them probably aren't enforceable because the state retains jurisdiction over the design and construction of manufactured housing. So it doesn't hurt anything to have them in there, but they're also not really doing anything because, generally speaking, local units don't have the ability to regulate manufactured housing communities unless the state has sort of specifically granted them that right. And I doubt that's happened here. They don't do that very often.
But now townships would have the right to say if that piece of land, if somebody bought a piece of land and they wanted to put a manufactured home park there, they would have to vote on it, right?
So the rule is that you have to provide for manufactured housing by right somewhere in your community. You can't.
Okay.
Most communities do that the way that Cedar Springs does, which is you have a specific zoning district for it where it's permitted and you say this is our manufactured housing park district or something like that, and that's where they go. If you don't have that, and there are some townships that don't, especially when you go farther up north, and it's a lot more rural. Sometimes they just permit a manufactured unit just the same way you would permit a house. You want to buy 2 acres and put a trailer on it? Have at it, and that's fine too. But you got to permit them somewhere somehow. And so here, they would have to come through the planning commission for like a site plan review. But you would really be applying the state standards because the state has the design standards for parks, and they would also have to permit it and everything else. So, you're not entirely like cut out of the process, but your role is a lot more diminished than it would be for any other type of land use within the community.
Okay.
Somebody comes in to, build a new car wash, that's fully a planning commission decision based on the zoning ordinance. Something like this, you have a say, but it's tempered. Let's put it that way. So those are kind of the major things that we found. So to kind of move this forward, I guess our question for you after having read this is are there any topics or issues that you want us to tackle, or you want to just let Darla and myself just run with it, or?
I want the use variances out of there. I did not know that was in there. I do not like that at all. That's straight up. I do not like that. And It all seems pretty straightforward, but I'm looking at all of y'all. Would y'all like to go through this or?
When was the last time a variance was granted? Applied for them, but it's really rare.
Well, use variances, I've only been here for 3.5 years and we've never done one. Dimensional variances, we've done maybe half a dozen of those, and I'd say half maybe were granted. But use variances, I mean, I've been doing this job for 20 years. I've only even reviewed maybe 4. They hardly ever come up. A lot of communities don't allow them at all. The few that do, like I said, they have to show that there's basically no other marketable use of the property. So if you're zoned like residential, you have to say, I can't build a house here. That's a possible standard, right? So,
I know people have applied for a variance through the zoning board of appeals, if I'm not mistaken. So my question is, what is the zoning board of appeals job other than to grant variances?
2 kinds of variances to keep in mind. So the one that they most routinely hear are what we would call dimensional or non-use variances. So that would be the required side setback is 10 feet, and I want to put my building 5 feet from the property line. And so to get that, I need special permission from the ZBA to build it there. That's a very typical thing that they would continue to do. We would just be looking at eliminating a use variance where they're looking to establish a land use in a district where it's not ordinarily permitted. That would be just that's one of the things that they would not be doing anymore. And they don't really ever do it now. I don't know if one's ever been granted. The other things that the ZBA can do, doesn't come up very much, but the ZBA can interpret the zoning ordinance, so it's kind of judicial in that sense, where they can say, we think that this sentence means X. There's an applicant that I've been talking to recently where I'm very tempted to send them to the zoning board of appeals to have them do exactly that and figure out the fronts and sides and rear lot lines, because the ordinance isn't clear. And so that would be something where they could say, this is the front, this is the side, and that's the way it is. They would have that authority. And they can also hear appeals. So if they think that that through like a site plan review decision that you make or an administrative decision that Darla makes is a mistake or an error, then they can appeal that to the zoning board of appeals, and the ZBA can reverse what staff has done or what you have done. Again, those 2 things are pretty darn rare. Almost all they do is variances, but a use variance is just one of the 2 kinds of variances that they would be looking at. And we wouldn't really do anything with the dimensional side. That language is fine, and they would continue to serve that function.
There's no reason to like leave the variance thing in here though for the once in a 100 opportunity. I mean, is it really hurting us to get rid of it? Because there's always a huge special exception.
I mean, so you propose to get rid of use variances. I do occasionally get resistance to it, often from attorneys with that exact thought process. They'll say it's that 1 in a million relief valve that we need this to, somehow pull ourselves out of the ditch. Think of maybe one time where that's sort of been the case, where it's been a really useful tool. But again, that's one time with one client in 20 some odd years. So, and I think now too, we have better tools, right? We can do a conditional rezoning, which is kind of the same thing, but you would grant that and city council would do it instead of through granting a special exception.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then, I mean, just maybe educate me a little bit here. I know that the state really dictates a lot with mobile home parks, but the city also has authority to grant zoning for new mobile homes that are coming into parks and not. I mean, I haven't reviewed the ordinance on this in a while, but I don't even know what I'm trying to ask here. I guess after reviewing it, you didn't find anything in there that really needed to be put in, taken out.
Least so, the state administrative rules include design standards for mobile home parks that talk about the street width and shed location and all of this fairly detailed stuff. If somebody wants to bring in an individual manufactured home into an existing park in Cedar Springs, there's an approved plan on file. The city has a site plan, right? So they would have to put it and place it in a manner that's consistent with that site plan. This is more referring to establishing a new mobile home park. So if somebody wanted to, if they bought 5 acres someplace and wanted to put, 20 manufactured houses on it, the standards that you have in the zoning ordinance wouldn't necessarily even apply unless they're the exact same as what the state's already making you do anyways. So it's not that they're bad standards, it's just that they're, in a way, when you're looking at something like that, they're kind of pointless because we can't really apply them anyways. That's kind of what I'm getting at with that comment about manufactured housing. We don't do them very much either, so I'm not an expert. I haven't been through too many of them, but that's my understanding of how they kind of work.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind getting a email just to tell me what standards we need for the review of the site plan, because you said we have 19. So I would like to know, okay, so this is what we're gonna knock it down to, and then because I would like to know exactly what we're knocking it down to. Want to make sure that we got everything covered.
Yep, so we have lots of examples from zoning ordinance that we've read. Here is your 19, and here's how we would.
That would be perfect.
We need to kind of Frankenstein them together into something that works for you guys. We'd be happy to do that.
That's perfect. I just make sure that we don't cut off our foot or something there. Any other discussion on zoning ordinance audit?
Realistic time frame to resolve all of the issues. What was the goal? Known issues. Sorry. Yeah.
So if we were to go through and do everything on this list, I guess there's a couple ways that we can do it. One is just write one gigantic omnibus amendment that's 30 pages long that addresses every single one of those. We could do that pretty quickly. But we can run into problems doing that just because it gets convoluted and confusing and everyone gets lost. So, I mean, we could just kind of go down the list and just kind of work through them. And if we just do a few at a time, we could probably knock most of these out in a year and a half. I mean, it's not a horrendously long list, I don't think. Ordinance is not a bad ordinance at all. I've seen really, really good ordinances and really, really, really bad ordinances, and yours is way closer to the good side than it is to the bad side.
Yeah, you do this for a living, okay? You get into these weeds way deeper than anybody else. So if anybody knows how to do this, you're the guy. Okay? They got to conform with the state, other counties, all that stuff. Can you go through this and just, I don't know how many things you got here, 20? Give us top 5 that need to go first. We got a couple in here that actually got to get us in trouble if we don't change them. So let's give us the ones that got to go, and then the ones that, okay, not as critical, and then the rest that maybe we need to think on it a little bit more,
Yeah.
and we'll take it at that level.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we can do the reversion of rezoned areas, nonconformities, appeals of special uses.
Take some time for it, go have a beer and then think about it.
Those 4 or 5 I could do in my sleep. They're
Men here that need to be dealt with.
Yep.
Okay, and then the rest, we'll take them as needed, but we'll get it done in a year.
can do.
I love the verbal back and forth. This is great because this helps us to continue down the road that we want to continue on. All right, anything else? All right, our next is the joint meeting with Solon Township Planning Commission.
So I put quite a bit of information in your packet. We don't have to go through all of it. We can go through whatever you'd like. Some of you being newer to the board, do you want me to walk you through if somebody comes to the city and says, this parcel is in Solon Township, we want water and sewer, we need to bring it into the city? How that happens?
Yes. As easy as possible.
So we're talking about property Taco Bell to 131, basically that area. That's the HC district, highway commercial. Any vacant land, for example, the Holiday Inn, before it was built, they identified that parcel. They worked with the property owner to buy the property. They want water and sewer. They approach the city and say, we're buying this parcel. We want city water and sewer. There's a process we go through, public hearings to bring the parcel into the city. Now, that parcel, we tax it. They don't get a tax bill from Solon Township. They get a tax bill from the city. Property's built. They pay the taxes to us. Once a year in March, we take all the parcels that happened to and pay Solon Township 2.5 mils. That's basically what they gave up when they allowed the parcel to come into the city. So out of our 15.5 mils, we give 2.5 to them. The rest of that money is what we use to police, fire, elections, all the services that we provide with our tax dollars. Pretty much in a nutshell.
Goes through obviously us for approval, but then does Solon Township have to do something on their end too?
I don't think
I
so.
don't think so. The last time this came up was with the apartments. Is that? Yeah, so I don't think they have to do anything because that's what they did when they signed on to the original agreement. So it's kind of it's an annexation with a different name.
By having this agreement already in place,
Does it
the city and apply.
agreement good for? Like when does it?
Term, I was just looking at that today, 2049,
Oh,
December 30, 2049.
Extends another 50 years after that, I think is what I saw in there, so unless they decline, so.
So the development, and we've brought this to prior year joint meetings with their planning commission. We've shown them how much money we've given to them by allowing this development to occur. And if that land was still vacant, they would be making 2.5 mils on vacant land. Developed, they're making, in 2024, we sent Solon Township $38,000. There's a few parcels still left that could potentially be developed.
You mean like in front of Family Farm and Home and stuff, or?
There's more property behind where the apartments are being built. behind the police station.
Also, bit of 17 Mile too. I believe there's more in the agreement. If it can be served with utilities is another question, but if it could.
Yeah, I think next to the sheriff's department, there's more land back there.
Like the storage units today, are they 425?
They're not. I was not happy with that one because we approached and said, do you need city water and sewer? Nope, nope, we're just storage units. Okay. Then all of a sudden I see a misdig come through for a well there. Health department and said, no, if they need water, that needs to come into the city. Oh, it's just a well for a bathroom.
Yeah.
Or, no.
As when they're taxed, are we getting anything? We're not, but they are dumping their storm wastewater. I mean, they're using our infrastructure, right? I mean,
Running to the creek. I don't know.
They would have, they don't have any kind of. Don't have, so they could do theoretically, they could have tried to do a well and septic, but they would be, so they wouldn't be using. They might not be hooked up to your water or sewer. They would theoretically be managing their own stormwater on site, but certainly they'd be utilizing your streets and sidewalks and everything else, right? I mean, there's always some of that back and forth, but yeah, that's where it's tricky because when it's triggered by the extension of water and sewer, they don't need water and sewer. They're not going to want to be 425 in because they're not going to want to pay the additional property tax. So yeah, that's the storage units are one of the few examples where it hasn't worked out as well.
yeah.
Apartments or the Holiday Inn Express, it's an example of how it's supposed to work. And a lot of communities do. This is a really common arrangement. A lot of communities do it.
Mhm.
And for the most part, we get along just fine with the township on all of this stuff. We don't have any big points of contention.
We didn't meet with them for years. We just, this will be our third meeting jointly, so we have tackled any big issues.
There's a couple things that, like the sidewalk thing. I mean, 17 miles ridiculous. Why do we not have sidewalks in front of the businesses there? And why does one business have it and then no one has it next door? And then, so I think there's some stuff like that that really needs to be ironed out. But it's super important that we meet with them once a year. I'm glad that we're doing that again. I mean, how could we not? Especially when it's being developed as quickly as it is.
That was the thing I was gonna tell you. Make sure you read your commercial sidewalk report, because I knew you were gonna bring up sidewalks. So I was like, hey, they put that in there just for you.
They're the biggest challenge is, like they're on the same. I mean, they understand when we meet with them. It's just how do we implement that? How do we put a plan of action together? So it's tricky. So I guess brainstorm for the next month and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So the second piece of this was the highway commercial district sidewalk map that we put together. City council asked staff to put this together. We did. I emailed it to Solon Township, August 25th, 2025, and asked that it go before their planning commission for consideration. I got, no word back. So September 11th, I reached out again and said, did your planning commission have a chance to read the sidewalk proposal? And the township supervisor replied September 15th and said, the planning commission did talk about the sidewalks for a short time, but we need to check and see what areas are in our jurisdiction and which ones are in the 425 area. I know a couple that are definitely in the township that did not require sewer and water, so obviously did not go to the 425. That detail is in the report. And there's been no communication since. I think for sure, March 31st, we should say,
Well, Rebecca put a really nice, yeah, there's a nice packet that Rebecca put together, you know, so, yeah.
and see what their thoughts are.
A map for the March 31st meeting combining sheets 50 and 30. 50 and 34. Basically, just so it's colored to show phase 1, phase 2, and then the service area. Maybe that's what they're a little bit confused about. I'm thinking if we showed that more clearly, it might help. Walks, like where they're missing and where they are. Is there another map that shows both the phase 1, phase 2 service area with the sidewalks missing?
The 425 boundaries in the master plan somewhere. So we could just use that as a starting point, then just draw the lines on there from, yeah, that wouldn't be hard.
I think we can put it to, you should be able to put it together, but I think that might just be helpful for that meeting.
No problem.
So I think one of, I mean, us or Solon Township, either one. You know, I think an agreement to maybe split engineering 50-50. We need a cost estimate based on this map, you know, the parcels in the city, the parcels in the township, what does that cost? Somebody's got to take the lead and get the ball rolling, and engineering is the place to start.
We use, Fishback for that kind of stuff.
Fishbeck is our city engineer.
Do they have a designated engineer?
Solon Township? I have no idea.
I know.
Then I had a question too. The big parcel of land behind the new apartments that are going in and behind CTA there. Is that all one? And I mean, like,
Behind the apartments, you've got, the brook. And. What's that? Yes. And then right past the brook, you got the Gunnels, and the Gunnels own from Pine Street all the way to Cherry. So I think it's what, 10 acres there?
they own all this.
Hang on. All right, where am I at? Where is CTA? So there's the brook. So CTA is over here. So the Gunnels would be right here. And they own all the way from Solon all the way to Cherry. So they own
That's that house there.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
They own a big, huge parcel. And then
Muskegon Street.
Yeah, that's a big
all the way to
parcel.
Muskegon.
Yeah, that's 43 acres.
See, right here's the parcel viewer. Kent County parcel viewer, and you can click on each.
I sure didn't know they owned all the way. Because they've sold a
You know
lot of
that-
that off.
Acres.
Right. For the new soccer fields, which that's to the east. And
Yeah, south of that, they've got, 43 acres.
But business doesn't own it. No one's, yeah.
no,
Now a family owns it.
right.
Okay. There then. And then north,
That's why, sorry, that's why when we were discussing Cherry Street cutting all the way over here,
Mhm.
that's why we were talking about like, well, with the Gunnels, we would have to, you know, we gotta go across their property and I don't know if we can, so that's why that has never been done.
yeah. Sure.
Cause we're not just gonna take bulldozers to people's property. That's not fun.
And then of course, north of, is it Solon Street there? None of those parcels have ever come to the city for 425.
Aren't in the 425 area.
The 425 is just all this purple. So you got White Creek one, but well, actually, no, it goes to In Tandem, which is next to White Creek, which is new. Cause this was done in 23.
Yeah.
And goes up to, Sylvan. Because now we have the hotel and the, apartments now. They're right here. So this map here is from 23, so they don't show the
Then the last question that I have, I've heard through the grapevine that across from 131, there's Myers on a well that shares it with Cedarfield. And I don't know if that agreement is still like in place for years and years and years. I'm just wondering, does the city foresee extending 425 west of 131?
So the well, Myers Well provides water to Aldi, Cedar Animal Hospital, Goodwill, Woodlawn Hills Development, Meyer, and Cedarfield.
Is that like all in a contract with all of them? I mean, how in the world?
that's a Solon question.
Yeah.
But we're not gonna be running, water. People have asked that before. We're not gonna run water across 131. That's not feasible. It's just not. I mean, you're really not gonna run it across the bridge, so you'd have to go down and dig and good lands. That's just not feasible.
I mean, it could happen. You know how DTE runs all their gas lines underground?
But you gotta put up a lot of money for that.
I'm just wondering, like, I don't know what the deal is with that contract in it, but I'm wondering in 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, are those businesses gonna have a bad deal come through for their water and they're gonna all approach the city and be like, hey, we need water over here.
Yeah, that's a question for Solon. But Solon has also taken 17 mile west of 131. They're turning that all in commercial. So, there's got to be plenty of water there if they're turning it all commercial out there.
You would think.
All right.
That's all thank you for doing that. That's great. Thank you. Yeah.
Is it premature to ask for a proposal from Fishback on how much this would cost? I'm assuming that's what Solon's going to ask for. Like the first question they're going to ask is what's it going to cost to figure out if this is even a thing.
Should we bear 100% of that cost?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, how much front footage is in the township versus that needs sidewalks versus front footage parcels in the city.
Is it possible that Fishback can put the proposal together so we have a cost of what they would think the engineering aspect of it would be without for a fee? Okay.
Right.
And what that fee would be.
If that's going to be their first question, and it's like, I have no idea,
And then we would have to split the fee with Solon.
Yeah.
But once that cost is identified, I think a good application would be to the Kent County CDBG funds, Community Development Block Grant funds. We've received 2 CDBG sidewalk grants for the city. That's how we did a lot of the sidewalks on the east side of Main Street and the west side of Main Street, 2 different projects. Match. They'll fund 75% of sidewalk projects. Knowing that communities pooling together. I think that would be a great application.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's keep that in your head for the.
But we have to get the engineering done for that first
Right.
and get the
scope.
I know. I mean, even if we don't get the grant the first year, if we apply for it every year until we get it, if we have the engineering done, I think, yeah, we can go somewhere with that.
Any other discussions on the sidewalks in the highway commercial district?
So is there any other topics that you would like to see on the agenda? Meeting.
Well, we talked I guess the main point of our discussion last year was traffic flow, but there's really nothing we can do about that, so what's the point of talking about it? I mean, the city,
Update, I was gonna mention that under my comment, under city manager comments.
I can't think of any right now. I know sidewalks is the big thing. I'm sure you and Mr. Moore have something y'all will probably think of. But, I think it's all going pretty good right now. It looks like that meeting with Solon will be March 31st at 7 p.m. in the Sheriff's Department. Does everybody know where that is? Next to Advance Auto, the new sheriff's office. Yep, they have a community room there. And so we all meet there at 7 on the 31st, and we will have our joint meeting. Okay, open discussion for issues not on the agenda. We have our correspondence, so our 2026 calendar. Miss April, anything with that? Okay, nothing new. Staff comments. Back to Miss Darla.
So a gentleman from the Kent County Road Commission, called and talked to Rebecca a couple weeks ago when I was out of the office. When I got back, we met with him. His name is L.R. Cole. And he is proposing a project on White Creek from where Solon comes to White Creek, 450 feet to the north, 650 feet to the south, east, cutting that hill down 8 feet. So we're like, we have a developer putting in water main like in a couple months. If they cut that hill down 8 feet, our water line's gonna be exposed.
8 feet, I mean, that hill is way taller than 8 feet.
They cut that hill down 8 feet. The drainage, it's going to totally screw up all the drainage that they've done for the hotel, for the apartments. Everything is.
It doesn't go south to the hotel. It's not that far south of the intersection. It's to where it'll be at the location where the fire hydrant is now. And then the water line kind of cuts across that field to the brook. From there, it'll be cut down.
I don't like that.
They need to acquire property, 17 feet of road on both sides of White Creek, so they're having discussions with the property owners, which the city's not involved in.
Because there's a house right there.
It's their road. I mean, the issue is the price. The cost estimate is anywhere from 1.2 to 1.5 million dollars. So they were looking to us to help fund the project. I said, it's not in the city. I can't use Act 51 money. We don't have that kind of money in the general fund.
Solon Township, they may help you out.
Yeah.
It'd be done, because we talked about safety at that intersection at the council level. Once those apartments go in, all that traffic in there, that
It's gonna be crazy.
That intersection.
stop sign intersection is,
Instead of how much is it to put up a stoplight?
Well, if they can cut it down, then they would put a stoplight there.
Oh, that's the intention.
I don't understand why they have to cut it down to put a
The
stoplight.
truck's going up that hill. He can't stop on the hill. He needs to keep going.
Oh, I got you. I got you.
Yeah. But I don't understand how 8 feet would solve that, cause you're,
Yeah.
but they're the engineers, they know what they're doing, I guess.
Okay.
Find funding for it, good luck.
Yeah, right.
Have at it.
I went out to Wendy's on my lunch today and discovered that there's like a 2-story building already built. Apartments are going in, so guess I haven't been out there in a while. So they are really going to town. And then I shared with you the city hall pictures. Our city hall project is going fabulous. We are on schedule. Thank you so much. Hopefully we stay on schedule for a move-in date the first week of April. So we'll have an open house and be in to come and see it. So very exciting to be part of that project. That was all I had.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Darla? Miss April, any comments? All right. Planning Commission members, any comments, correspondence? Seeing none, we will go to Braden, the report of the city council representative.
Have anything to report? That's urgent. Can't even remember what the last meeting was about, so.
All right.
Important.
And we will look at Mr. Moore, the report of the planning consultant.
I don't think I have anything else either. Got some work to do.
At 8:17, I will adjourn us.